You're listening to the All Systems Go podcast, the show that teaches you everything you need to know to put your business on autopilot. Learn how to deploy automated marketing and sales systems in your business the right way with your host, the professor of automation himself and founder of Automation Bridge, Chris Davis.
Welcome to the All Systems Go podcast, and I'm your host, Chris L. Davis. No, I'm just playing. I've always been told I have a radio voice, so sometimes when I'm recording this podcast, I'm envisioning this being a late night radio show. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the All Systems Go podcast. I'm your host, Chris L. Davis, the founder of Automation Bridge, an online publication for small business automation, where we focus on turning digital marketing professionals into automation service providers by providing a variety of educational resources and training. And in this episode, what I want to do is I want to address what every person who has ever and will ever build automations experiences. Okay. And I've alluded to this term, this theme, this dynamic in previous podcasts, but I've been seeing it rear its head within my circle of influence quite a bit lately, more specifically, honestly, with me too. And I figured I'd address it publicly in terms of what it is and also how to eliminate it, how to solve this. I don't want to call it an issue. It's just one of those things, right? That happens. So if you're new to the podcast, make sure you subscribe and share this episode or the podcast in general once you listen to it in its entirety. Okay. I like people to act intelligently. So as excited as you may be, hopefully you're excited to really dive in and listen to this for the first time. Make sure you get at least one episode under your belt, and then share like crazy. Okay. If you're a subscriber to the podcast and you have not left a 5-star rating and review, I invite you to do so now. Now is the perfect time in the beginning. Just go out to the front of your app, wherever the link is, leave a 5-star rating and review. This podcast will continue to play. As you do so, if you're not subscribed, we're available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. You can subscribe on YouTube. We are available everywhere you get podcasts. All right. So with that being said, building automation it's so frustrating at times, but so exciting. And when I say building automations, I'm really talking about automating process. And we talk about marketing automation a lot and sales automation a lot because that's what people understand, but it's really process. For me, it doesn't matter what the process is. I'm always thinking through how to streamline, how to clearly identify the process, streamline it, and then couple the right technology with it, right? And then that becomes your ingredients for automation. So let me ask you this: has this ever happened to you? You identify something that needs to be updated. It's a quick update, right? Maybe it's an existing automated process. Maybe it's just adding something new, something small, like, hey, let me add this form, or let me update this email. Whatever the case is, 5 hours later, you get up from what appeared to be a 10 to 15 minute update. What just happened? Where did the time go? And why did that just take so long? And you, my friend, my friendly listener, have just experienced what I call consideration creep. Okay. And I define it as the multiplication of accurate considerations identified prior to starting a project. Okay. So it's the multiplication of accurate considerations during the project of those same considerations identified before the project. Okay. And the important word here is accurate considerations, because consideration creep is really It's reserved for experienced people. Okay, you don't have consideration creep without being experienced, because when this same thing happens and you don't have experience, that just means you don't know what you're doing. Right, like that's not consideration creep, because you didn't start with a set of accurate considerations. Okay, so you have to be able to know what you're doing first. And for example, I know building a landing page does not take me 5 minutes. It doesn't take anybody 5 minutes. Even if the landing page is built and you're just duplicating it, there's still the process of integrating it with your CRM, potentially updating some things, because you're duplicating it for a reason. I know that it's not going to be a 5 minute thing. Right. So that is an accurate consideration. However, when I sit down as an experienced implementer, those considerations start to multiply. OK, totally different from somebody who's never done it, doesn't have much experience, and has watched a YouTube video or two, has this novel idea that, hey, let's just build a landing page. Yeah, we could do that today. And it's like, do you even know what it takes to do that? So consideration creep is reserved for the experienced builder. And since it is reserved for those who are experienced, and those who are inexperienced can't be considered to experience it, this just simply means there's no way to escape it. It's always present. The potential is always there, and it happens to the best of us. Here's the truth about it. The more mature your systems, the more prone you are to experiencing this. Okay. And I'll add to it, the more experienced you are, the higher your probability of experiencing this. And remember, I'm speaking to the builder. That's the operative word today, because I'll tie it in at the bottom of this podcast. At least I'm envisioning this now. But right now, I want you to know I'm talking to the builder, the implementer, the person who's responsible for doing it. Okay. And let me give you some reasons why, for the mature systems and for the experienced marketer, why you experience this. Because with mature systems, everything is intricately connected. We even see this with software. The more advanced, or more sophisticated software gets, the harder it is just to update one setting, one feature, because it's connected to everything else. And from a user standpoint, we're like, why don't you just give us the ability to do this? And it seems so simple. But being the owner of the system, well, if I update just this option on the front end, it's actually tied to a whole bunch of stuff on the back end. And then this and that, I got to get engineering involved. Then we got to get the product and team involved, and XYZ, right? The same is for your systems that you put in place for your business, right? There is no such thing as, hey, let's just update that email. Because if you're creating a consistent, if your copy is consistent, it's not just one email. And if you change the angle in one email, you're potentially throwing off other emails, a landing page, sales pages, all of that. So it's all intricately connected, right? And there is rarely a case. I don't even think this is possible when I'm thinking about it now as I'm talking. But there is not. I'm going to remove the word rarely. There's not a case where you can update one thing without it impacting other areas. And this is one of the features that ActiveCampaign implemented. I don't know when. I don't keep track of it anymore. But you can add a tag in the automation builder, right? And a few seconds later, it will tell you this tag may trigger these automations, and that's a great feature to help you understand this action here has implications elsewhere. Okay. And that is actually really unique. I think it's something that all platforms should do, because the platform knows what's connected. Right now, let me say this. When I'm training and mentoring and teaching marketers, we document, we map. So we know what's connected. However, it's nice to have some checks and balances in the tool that's connecting it all. So if I have 3 automations that may be impacted by me saying remove a tag or add a tag, let me know. And that's a feature that I'm glad that ActiveCampaign has, because sometimes when you're just building, you add that tag and it shows you, 3 other automations are triggered. You're like, oh, wait a minute. What just happened, everybody? When you see that, that is a example of consideration multiplication, because I knew I wanted to add this tag, but right there, it tells me you need to consider that this action is going to affect these areas also. So now I have to take that into consideration. So you see why I said the multiplication of accurate considerations. So that happens. And no matter how great your documentation, we can have it mapped out, everything, it's going to happen. And it's not a bad thing. It's just how it is. It just speaks to the dynamic nature of marketing, right? And what makes marketing so complicated and difficult for some people. Okay, it's just hard to grasp because they're looking for these rules, these laws, these firm yeses and nos, and it's fluid. It is just fluid. My personality type, I like structure. I like definitive things. So it often surprises people how I can navigate so well and so easily through marketing. There's some other things that come into play that counteract that, that I'm aware of. But those are some of the reasons why you experience it as updating mature systems, right? Now, what about you as the experienced automated marketer, right? You can't update. Here's the thing about experience. This is where we'll see the quote, ignorance is bliss, actually show true, right? Because when you're experienced, you can't update or build anything really without thinking about optimizing it or the best way to do it while you're doing it. This is not a sequential thing. You just said, let me type this email. And as you're typing the email, you're thinking about, I can make this conditional. Oh, wait a minute. What landing page do I want to send them to? And when they go there, do I want to populate their name in the form? You're thinking about all this while you're doing it, right? The multiplication process of considerations is just automatic. So as you're mapping and planning, you're trying to encompass all possibilities and make sure it's optimized, right? And you do the same thing when you start building. So it's not just when you're updating, you do the same thing when you start building. You can't just use a basic form that you can build in your CRM. You want a dynamic form that has conditional fields and dynamic thank you pages to enhance the journey. This is what you're thinking about, right? You're not satisfied with just a standard email. You want to customize it for various segments, either through dynamic content like I mentioned or branching logic, right? An automation that has a bunch of if else's and sends different versions of that same email, right? You can't just build a landing page. You have to think through heat mapping scripts so you can see how people are engaging with it. It's a new landing page, right? So you want to know, is it working? Are people clicking where they want to click? Where are they getting stuck? You want to optimize the SEO settings. You're thinking about the social images to share. So when someone shares that landing page, what image shows up on social media, right? Decide if you want to use personalization on the page, and the list goes on. This is for an experienced builder, right? Again, none of this is bad. This is not a bad thing. It just is what it is. And you need to be aware of it because, again, you sat down for 30 minutes and got up 3 hours later. You just need to understand what's happening and why. And this is why there is a certain novelty in ignorance, right? In not knowing it all, because building is simple because you don't have the multiplication of the considerations is limited by your acumen. You build to the level of your intellect and you're done. So you do what you know to do. And you're like, oh, that was easy. I sat down and wrote 3 emails and that was fine. And then you look to the person to your right virtually, right? And they're more experienced and they're still going. And you're like, they're smarter than me. Why are they still going? Well, their considerations are multiplying as you're looking at them because they're thinking through intelligently ways to optimize, things to be mindful of, right? Oh, I can't do this because I don't want them to get this version. And if they do it again, I don't want my marketing to be repetitive and blah, blah, blah. It just grows. You see this. Have you experienced this? I can't hear you, but do me a favor. Just nod your head if you're driving, if you're on the treadmill, if you're walking, if you're at your cubicle, if you're at your desk, at your home office. Just nod your head or just say yes. Has this happened to you? I know I'm not the only one. And in fact, the reason why I know I'm not the only one is because rarely do I experience something in isolation, but we had a recent talk about this in the private community, the Automation Bridge private community. And it was a great thread. It was just a great thread to be able to talk through it with other people and hear how their consideration creep comes in. Right. So, when we're talking about intelligence, it can be a door to consideration creep, right? But again, when you have that ignorance, you don't know about conditional content. You don't know about tagging behaviors on your website to personalize communication in your CRM, right? Pre-populating form fields. Life is simple. And there are a lot of times this approach is required regardless of your experience and the maturity of the system. Starting simple and getting sophisticated out of necessity is always required, but it also requires discipline, right? It requires discipline to turn that off, to turn a certain level of intelligence off. And remember, just so we're in the same context, I'm talking to the builder. Okay. I need to stress that because I won't be talking to the builder in a minute, or I'll be talking to you differently in a minute. Okay. But it requires discipline to turn that off, because it's not always, I said it's not a bad thing. It is what it is, but it's not always good for you to always for you to consistently or frequently fall to consideration creep. It's not always a good thing. I'm just telling you, you can never go wrong taking into account accurate considerations. But the act of consideration creep is not always good. And the main originator of it, when we talk about when it's not good, right? The main originator is jumping prematurely into automating an unidentified and new process. I mean, that is the leading cause. How about that? That is the leading cause, because you go from idea to implementation and you skip over planning and mapping. And before you know it, you think you know what to do. And then you start doing it and your considerations are multiplying and you're not tracking them. You're just building on the fly. And before you know it, what was simple, not only what was simple and supposed to take a short amount of time, not only did it not take a short amount of time, but now it's also not working. It's the worst thing. So there's a lot of times where you just have to slow down, right? And though it may take time to slow down and do things right the right way, you'll actually reach the desired result faster. Because what fools you when you go from idea to implementation is you can actually walk away with something built, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work correctly. Whereas if you take your time, maybe you don't get to built as fast, but when you get there, it's working. Right? And again, the creep, is what we'll call it, the creep, will always have the potential of rearing its head. But at least by being aware of it and understanding the leading cause, and I'll give you some pointers too, at least going through the right steps, you can have some control over it. You can contain it. I'm speaking like it's a disease or virus. It's the leading cause, and you can you can contain it, right? Maybe this is the pandemic, like affecting how I think about things right now. But let me say this: I don't often. How do I want to say? there are times where I welcome the creep. I do. The creep of consideration. There are times that I welcome it. And here's why. Because I trust the considerations that come up. And I'm speaking from an experienced builder perspective here. I trust my consideration. So I know if I'm thinking about it, I should be thinking about it because I've done it so many times. So I trust that, right? Can I overcomplicate things at times? Yes. Is my first build often overly considered? Right? Yes. And by overly considered, I mean, am I just trying to solve too many future issues? Yes. I'll admit, my hand is raised right now. As I record this, my hand is raised. Does my system always work well? Yes. Okay. And that's the end result, right? So me personally, I don't mind if 20 minutes turns into 3 hours. I'm not saying all the time. These are rare occasions for me. It's not like every time I sit down for 20 minutes, it ends up being 3 hours. I would be very inefficient at that level. But I know up front, the time required to do it right is going to repay me in full and beyond as I continue to leverage the system. So that 3 hours, it just keeps paying me back because I never spend that amount of time on an unproven process. It's always on a process. It's always on a sound. I'm always working with the sound process. So putting in that extra time to make sure that it's effective, it's working. The more people I put through it in the future, every time I do that, I get more for my 3 hours. I get more and then when you spread it out over years, literally years, that 3 hours ends up being like a second. You spend a second or less on every lead, right? It's a beautiful thing. This is the system's approach, right? And plus, not only do I trust my considerations, but I'm always thinking about building for the future. Now everything requires discipline because you can get so far into the future, so far ahead of yourself. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about being mindful that things will change and make sure that this can scale and grow, right? And future for me is usually revenue and leads. Increased revenue, increased leads. Can the system hold up? All right. So it's when I'm dealing with consideration creep, it's really the sound processes. That's what really gives me the permission to put in the extra work for now. Because again, I know the process will be repeated multiple times and it's profitable. I don't mind putting in the work. And I would say to you, you shouldn't either. Builders, you should not mind putting in that extra work to really finalize that system, right? That process, because it's going to be repeated over and over again. And if it's a great process, the people that go through it, they're going to have the same experience of the previous person. Okay. So let me give you a few pointers to deal with this consideration creep to help minimize it. And then I'll show you how to eliminate it. That's the point of this podcast, is eliminating it. Let me show you how to minimize it first, because as the builder, I'll be honest with you, it's going to be very hard to eliminate it, but you can do a really good job at minimizing it. Okay. So the first thing that I would tell you is to always focus on the process, identifying, streamlining it as much as possible. The process is your key, right? Because convoluted and confusing processes always lead to undesired and overly automated, too many tools, just things not working. And it gets overwhelming when you're not focused on the process. So remember, the process is always the focus, right? 2, I talked about this in a previous podcast where I said, if you want to move quickly, plan quickly, learn how to plan quickly. But mapping it out quickly and solving as many problems on the mapping phase, that's going to be your saving grace. Whether you use printer paper, I like to use printer paper at times. Sometimes I'll jump on my whiteboard. Sometimes I'll use my iPad. and draw it out there. But whatever the case is, you have to get it out of your head and mapped somewhere. Some people like to jump right into flowchart software, right? But you have to get it out your head, get it somewhere so you can solve and see the problems. And then while you're, like preparing to build it, you'll realize, oh, wait a minute, because you're going to be making changes. Very rarely, as good as I am, very rarely does what I draw out the first time end up being a build, because as I build it, more considerations come up. And then maybe I'll go back and update my map. Maybe I'll just do it there. That's the dynamic process of building. Third is always ask yourself, do I need to do it this way? And need is the key word there. This speaks to the MVP approach, minimum viable process. What are the minimum steps to get this done? What are the minimum steps that I want someone to take to get there? I tell you what, when I'm driving, when I'm in the airport, when I'm just having some free time, that is the time that I use to really identify, minimize, and streamline process. I'm always thinking about how to make processes better, because better processes make even better automation. Right? So you need to be spending some time there. Don't be afraid to not automate every step. I see this happen too often. I have to catch myself. You have the process identified, you're clear, and you're like, okay, let me automate all of it. And that's the fastest way to get into trouble, not just with consideration creep, but assessing technology. Because now you're looking for tools and to do all of this stuff. And before you know it, you have Zapier going to your CRM, sending something out to a webhook somewhere else. And then it's like, whoa, this thing just grew. That's why you try to automate every single step. It's okay to use a notification that sends something to your team to tell them to do something, right? Or it's okay to have some manual input at some point, just for quality control of the process. Your technology and systems still need a manager. You do realize that, right? We never recommend 100% automation because it's not realistic. So you're still going to need to manage, but the system should tell you where the lead is at, where the customer is at, so you know where to go, and it's quick and easy, right? And then lastly, start simple. Start simple. Discipline. This takes discipline. You could add more later. You can always add more later after you see how it performs. But here's the thing. Most of the time, once you see something's working, you at least the disciplined builder, you don't mess with it, right? You see it's working. That's a box checked. And then you go to other areas. You start focusing on other areas of your business. And then later, maybe when you want to optimize something, you'll come back and you'll do more. So what I like to think when I'm the builder and you're thinking, do I need to do it this way? How do I start simple? Let me map it out real quickly. You're going through all of these steps. One of the things I'm also saying to myself is, do I need to do this now? Right? Because you play this Jedi mind trick with yourself, because your mind thinks you need to do it. And if you say no, it's this whole, what is it? The threat, when someone threatens you, it's, the word is slipping my mind, but it's, I was almost there. But anyways, it's ultimatum. It's a mental ultimatum. It's like, look, we're doing this or this. And you don't want to do that with your mind, because it introduces decision fatigue. And it has to make a decision, and you may get performance anxiety and everything. So instead of the ultimatum, it's just more of an order. Say, okay, I'm going to do all of this. I'm just going to do this part first. Just going to do this much now. That's how you do the Jedi mind trick on yourself. You commit, like, yeah, we're going to do it later, and later may be way later. But the good thing is you pushed off all of that advanced stuff and started simple. Okay? Because consideration creep doesn't necessarily have a time limit, but you can limit the time required to implement all of it by following the pointers that I just gave you. And what I mean is there have been times where my creep has extended for weeks to months because I kept building on the fly instead of just sitting down and getting clear on what I was doing. I thought, again, idea to implementation. It seems simple, and you build it. Have you all ever done this? You built something, and it looks good. It just doesn't feel right. It just feels like you're missing something. You know, you're overlooking something, or it's like every time you visit it, you're like, it's working, but there's something off about it, right? That's what I mean by it doesn't have a time limit. It can extend, and you could be in this mental space where it's just incomplete, right? And there's no way to get rid of this for good. So when I say eliminate, the definition is really minimize to the point where it has no negative impact. That's the definition of eliminate. Because here's the thing. Here's the thing. Okay. There is a way. And you know what? I'm saying minimize to the point of no negative impacts, but I will also put in there, there is a way for it to be eliminated out of your life, like your time. Okay. And it's simple. It's simple. I've been talking about the builder because that is who we train at Automation Bridge, right? We take the builder and make them better. So I always need to address that. But here's how you simply get rid of you dealing with the consideration creep personally. And as simple as it is, it's don't be the builder. Don't be the builder. And I don't know if you thought you would be building out marketing and automation for your entire career, and maybe in some form you will. But there is going to be a time where you need to make the decision to not be the builder. Because as long as you're the builder, everything that I've covered in this podcast is going to be at play. Okay? That's why elimination is reserved for those who just simply don't do the building. And this speaks to the growth of the automated marketer. You have systems in place, you have documentation, and you have somebody doing the building for you. That's not to say you can never go in and just do something yourself, but your business doesn't require you doing the building. Because there's going to be a time where you will be instructing someone else to do the building, and they will do so per your documentation and recommendation, thus practically eliminating all creep from your professional experience. Okay, you don't have to deal with it because the builder now is, again, going through the SOP. The doc, do this, then that. Boom. You all see, I don't know what you see in your Facebook feeds and advertising, but for me, since I'm in marketing and all that, people keep advertising to me these ready-made SOPs, whether it's a Trello board or a Google Doc and all of this. And it makes sense because that documentation is what is keeping, it's like a fence for the consideration creep to stay out. It's like, nope, just do this, and that, right? They've done all the considerations for you, all the decision making, and just follow these steps. And it works. It does work. Don't get me wrong, it works. But when you have someone else be responsible for it, it removes it from your table, from your time, right? Now, that's not the end all, because now, again, your builder, the person you've trained to do the building, can now fall into consideration creep and things can get extended. And now you're frustrated. It's like, hey, why is this taking so much time? So here's the last thing. Okay. Here's the last thing that you have to do. You do these two things. And if I will be shocked if you're still, you shouldn't. There's no way. There's not a lot of guarantees in marketing, but these two things will get rid of it. Okay. Don't be the builder. Again, this is future pacing. For some of you, you're going to do the building. That's your business. That's what you enjoy doing. So this podcast will just keep you efficient. But as you grow, maybe 5, 6, 7 years down the line, now you're like, you know what? I need to scale. I can't be the one doing all the building. I need a team to deploy and do the building. I'll still do some building, but I need a team to do the majority of the building, right? It's going to happen. Growth. Okay. The next thing that you need to do to make sure that it doesn't creep back in is set a deadline. Set a deadline, because the deadline will prevent the builder from doing too much, or it will give them freedom. You say, hey, look, you've got, until tomorrow to get it done. Whatever you want to explore, whatever considerations, whatever time you want to put in to get it done, as long as it's done per this request by then. Just know this is the minimum requirement. Everything else is additional. And it is not required. If you want to put some bells and whistles on it, so be it. Those two things. And remember, the underlying theme is discipline. Because if you don't have discipline, it doesn't matter what. This entire podcast means nothing. If you're just going to do what you want to do what you feel to do when you sit down. There are times where if I'm operating as the builder in my business, I'll look at the clock and I'll say, okay, I'm going to give myself 15 minutes for this. Especially if it's more exploratory. If it's more exploratory, I'm just like, you know what? I don't want to I'm aware of the creep. I'm aware of it. So I will say, I don't get to the point where I set a timer. Maybe that helps for you. So it goes off and you're like, okay, shift back. But I'll look at it and say, okay, 30 minutes. I'm gonna play around with this. I'm gonna just, nothing serious. Just let me get in here and just kind of see. Right. And it helps. It helps get some of that curiosity out. It helps to, just kind of get a good idea of what the process may entail when it comes to building. But it's a deadline. It's a deadline. It's a defined time in which I'm saying I'm going to start and end this. And the ending of it should look like this. Okay. So hopefully this is helpful for you all as both builders and people who have matured beyond the builder. Okay. And you have a team of builders, right? And you don't have to be an agency to have a team of builders, but you just know you have grown to the point where it's not just you doing the building, which is a beautiful thing. And I'd like to tell you, congratulations. For those of you who are doing the building and are extremely successful, you're doing it at a high level. Congratulations to you as well. Okay. But the thing is, we need to be mindful of these elements, these dynamics at play, so that we're aware of them and we can identify them when they come in, because sometimes we could be erroneously blaming someone else or getting frustrated when at the end of the day, it's like, hold on, wait a minute. Did we identify the process? Did we map it out? Did we set a deadline? Right? And is everybody on the same page with this? Because again, you'll look and you'll see when you go through this checklist that I've gone through, you're like, no, we didn't. We skipped that step. You've got to respect the process. You got to respect the process. So, who needs to hear this episode? Think of the builder. If you're the one who is the sole visionary and operator of your business, and you've hired a marketer, they most definitely need to hear this. This is going to save you from deadlines being missed, projects going over, right? Because here's the reality. For those of you who are doing the building and you're early in your career, you have to be careful, because this consideration creep often is directly correlated to scope creep. You sit down and you say, hey, I'll build a landing page, a follow-up sequence, and a sales page for you. And you throw out a price. And all of these considerations take up time, make it bigger, it takes you longer. But guess what? Your time is increasing, but your revenue is not. It's a set thing. You say you're getting paid $1,500 for this. But if you're not aware of this consideration creep, it's just blowing your time up. And before you know it, you spend all of this time. And is it great what you've built out? Yeah. But you through your lack of experience, you didn't realize it was going to take all of that. This is why we need to be mindful of it. So if you're the operator of your business, visionary, you have somebody doing the marketing, you want to get this podcast in their ears. Okay. If you're the one doing the implementation, you need to use this as your guiding principles to make sure you're efficient and effective. What you want to build for the business is often more than the business needs. I'll just tell you that. As builders, that's how we are. Especially as you get more and more expert, you see so many opportunities, you see so many holes, but you run the risk of doing too much. And that's just what it is, right? So who's that person? Who's that community? What Facebook group, LinkedIn group, private community off Facebook? Where do you need to share this so that everybody can hear this? VAs, right? OBMs, online business managers, virtual assistants, right? What are those communities that you can share this in and really help them understand? This is why I'm always feeling like I'm putting in so much work and getting paid so less, or this is why it always takes me so long, or this is why I'm always frustrated with my marketer, right? Share this episode with them. And if you found value in today's episode, go beyond that. Share it on social media, but more so leave a 5-star rating and review in iTunes. Your first time listeners, this is now your time to subscribe. Hit the subscribe button and leave that 5-star rating and review. Here at Automation Bridge, we're dedicated to training digital marketing professionals to become the best automation service providers in the industry, and the only automation service providers, honestly, because small businesses, they're in need of marketers. And when I say small businesses, I'm thinking of these CEO operators, visionaries that they know they can see it. They've got the vision for the business. They can make the connections. They can even do the performance in the business. They need help getting the marketing systems in place, the automated systems in place. They need that. They don't need to be burdened with learning it. So that's what I mean. They're in dire need of marketers with this ability to learn marketing and technology to deploy these systems for rapid growth. So what I would say is, if that's you, you're listening to this, you're an aspiring builder, you're an experienced builder, there's no better place for this automation and marketing, no better place to learn it than to be immersed in a community of people who are openly talking, sharing, and discussing it daily. From, hey, I'm trying to figure this out, to, hey, look, this just worked, right? To, oh, check out this news. Look at what this tool just did, right? Staying in the know, not only for the space perspective, but from a strategy and skills perspective, right? That's what the Automation Bridge private community is. It's a community of automation specialists of a variety of industries. Okay, so if you're looking to speed up your learning curve, get in the know, stay in the know, rub shoulders with other people that will make you better quicker, this is the community for you. It's the only place that I am daily. I'm in there daily, engaging, recording videos, sharing things, discussing. We've got a private podcast. We can discuss in detail these podcast episodes. If you ever had questions or, hey, you said this, what would that look like? Right? It's all in the community, as well as doing monthly automation challenges to make the automation building, that learning process, just more fun, challenging, but fun. Right? So if you'd like to join, I'd love to have you. You can visit automationbridge.com/join. There's some information there, and we'll collect some information just to make sure you're a good fit. And you can join. You can join it and get right into the flow. All right. So hopefully I'll see you in the community. All of the show notes and podcasts are accessible at automationbridge.com/podcast. Not only can you go and access all podcasts, but we are opening guests. Yes, there will be guests coming up soon for the All Systems Go podcast. So if you'd like to be a guest, make sure you go to automationbridge.com/podcast and fill out the form to be a guest on the All Systems Go podcast. All right. So until next time, I see you online. Automate responsibly, my friends.